Right, so I'm back at the Sports Science Institute of South Africa, this time with Dr. Dale Ray, and we're discussing the power of sleep. So when we're talking about normal sleep then, what is normal in terms of duration and timing?
Adults need between 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. So it sounds like a lot of sleep, and I'm quite sure that most of us aren't getting that much. But it's also a point of relevance. So for example, for you, 7 hours might be sufficient sleep and 6 would be insufficient, and that's important to find what your sweet spot is. Whereas for me, perhaps 9 hours is what I need and 8 hours is insufficient. So the real key for each of us is to try to find out what our actual sweet spot is.
What are the consequences then of being sleep deprived?
So a lot of research has been done on the effects of sleep deprivation, and we know that it has consequences on our metabolism, for example. So it alters the way our hormones function. And one of the problems with that is that we see that we might be more likely to become obese or develop diabetes or hypertension or cardiovascular disease. So these are big health issues that can stem from something that we're able to actually change ourselves through our behavior.
As I understand it, active people, especially athletes, need more sleep than others. Why is that?
From a scientific perspective, we know that it's important purely or mostly for recovery. So it's a very important time in which your body can adjust to the training that you've done the night before. And in fact, we did a really interesting study last year where we sleep deprived some cyclists and then we measured their recovery from a high intensity interval training session. And we found that when they had a normal night of sleep following the training session, they recovered up to 99%. But when they had a sleep deprived night, they only recovered up to 95%. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but if you can imagine that day after day, you're not recovering as you should be, you're ultimately going to run the risk of perhaps becoming overtrained. So we know that sleep's really important for recovery for athletes.
How does one go about measuring your sleep?
Okay, so in an ideal world, we would do it in the laboratory because we need to know what's happening in your brain. But of course, that's not possible for everyone. So there are a number of commercially available devices on the market at the moment, which you can either wear on your wrist or which are linked to your phone, which allow us to detect movement and from that estimate your sleep or parameters of your sleep, how much you're sleeping, what the timing looks like, how much you wake up, how long it takes you to fall asleep. And although these are not as accurate as laboratory measurements, they certainly give us a good indication of the nature of your sleep.
What are the obstacles to getting a good night's rest? What are the hurdles?
It's true. So small children are a big hurdle to sleep in. We know that. Working hours are difficult to put things in, not to mention training. But I also believe that there's self-imposed barriers that people put in place. For example, they start to fear not being able to fall asleep. If you're having a problem sleeping, you might become anxious when you get into the bedroom, that you might not be able to fall asleep that night. And the other thing that people are doing is having a lot of light exposure at the end of the day, through televisions, through screen time, phones, iPads. And that is a really a troublesome area for us because it really prevents your body from priming itself to be able to fall asleep.
I would imagine you have a host of tips for us as to how to get a better night's sleep.
Sure. In an ideal world, it would be best to work with a person in a one-on-one situation to see what tips are going to work best for them. But just for some general or generic tips, things like having a constant routine regarding what time you wake up and what time you go to bed every night are really important. So keeping your bedtime as consistent as possible helps train your body to be prepared to sleep at that time of the day, for example. Another tip is, of course, to make your bedroom very sleep friendly. So for example, if you find light affects your sleep a lot, then you need to put blackout curtains in so that you're able to close off the light in the morning. Other things to think about are not having a television, for example, in your bedroom. It's quite a stimulating piece of technology to have there, and it will make it harder for you to go to sleep on time because you might just want to catch the end of this program or the next. And the other thing is to think about is not to use your bedroom for anything that's work related. So a lot of people go to bed with their technology. They'll take their laptop to bed with them or their telephone, and not only are they having screen and light exposure at that time of the day, but they're working and they're keeping their mind really primed, and that's not conducive to falling asleep.
Right. Now, in fact, can one catch up sleep?
So in the grander scheme of things, of course you can't catch up over your whole lifetime. The debt is probably too large. But if you've had short-term sleep deprivation, then definitely a couple of really good longer nights of sleep can definitely help to fill your sleep bank, if you like.
Right, it's the week leading up to the race. My body's excited to get going, but I've got to keep my sleep in mind. What am I going to do? What am I thinking about?
So there's a lot of talk out there at the moment that it's the night, 2 nights before the race that's important for you to get a good night's sleep. My feeling is that actually that needs to extend, and it's probably at least the week before. So I would suggest that you use the week before to bank sleep. Get as much as you can. Try and spend more time in bed in the week before than you would normally. The reality is that the night before the race, you're probably going to be anxious on one level or another. You probably have to wake up early for the start time. So the chances of getting a really good night's sleep the night before are quite minimal. But the good news is that it has very little impact on your actual performance the following day.
Dr. Dale, thank you so much for your incredible expert insight into my life, into the data, and of course for your feedback on that. I am going to leave you with this lovely item, and I'm going to bank some sleep.